So today we're having a very special, I don't want to say guest, because she is member of our Coptic Orthodox Church. She is dedicated to the service. She's an amazing lady. It's enough for you to talk with Debbie for just a few seconds. So you realize straight away the Spirit of God is guiding her and leading her to guide many people and to make them return the God to become a good member in the society and to come back to the bosom of the Father, come back to God. There's a lot of things that we can talk about, Exodus, youth, works that we all are ex. So I'm sure that maybe is going to give us a little bit of introduction for that, but that group is doing an amazing kind of service to anything you can imagine for people maybe who has no home, for people who has domestic violence, addiction, family brokenness, any kind of thing that you can imagine, people who cannot find employment, short-term and long-term accommodation for people who have been broken. Just, like browsing about the amount of service that Exodus is doing is amazing. Free consultation over the lines, materials, to support and to guide people what is the harmful effect of any bad habit or addiction or anything you can imagine, pornography, anything like that. So it's amazing work. Like I've never seen any kind of service like that in our church. And unfortunately for us, after 20 years like of serving here in Auckland, we've never heard of Exodus. It just come, by God guide us through a visitor from Sydney who's staying with us here working. And when I asked him, any professional one who can help us in some, like addiction problem that we face, some the boys and girls, he told me, I want to Exodus. Let's go have a start this. All started like last year, guided by one of the servants here, because I don't have any some kind of attention. And so, I found some help from Sydney, and then we, led to Delhi. Delhi, as you can see, shows no position at all because English is not position. She's pure Aussie, come from Irish ground, if I have good memory. And she became a member of the Coptic Church at the age of 15, 16. His very special Antonius Marcos, he mentor that he guided her when Moses began to baptize her. And later on, in Sydney, she married from a Saidi doctor, not just an Egyptian, but Saidi. So he's a blessed man. He's a blessed man, he's a dentist, helping the community, helping the church, looking after bishops, pope, priests, with all the good proportion here in Sydney, not in Auckland. So I'm thinking later on I become more trained with maybe Madam can have some, special treatment, if I travel to Sydney, it will be cheaper to get a ticket rather than fix my teeth here in Auckland, it costs me a portion just to go to work. I'm not going to talk much, but to tell you the truth, from the very second I saw, like being at the airport, I felt the Spirit of God is guiding me. So this is just simply, I don't want to spoil the time or take longer time to speak about it, but we're going to notice everything. We have just, one experience yesterday was one case, and I've seen how she is dealing in an amazing way. The art of communication skill, that's what I can say. And I'm sure that we need this kind of skill and this kind of task. So I will leave the microphone now to Debbie. She's going to lead us through the first sessions with groups with other crawlers couple meeting. Thank you very much, Lina, for all your effort, to arrange for this amazing live meeting. Thank you very much. Please, Debbie, come please take the microphone from me. We'll put our hand to Debbie just as a welcome. Then the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God.
Sorry, before we start, we set up on sli.do, that's sli.do. If you go put it on Google, and the event code is help, and then any question you're going to ask is anonymous, and it's going to come up, and if you want to ask any questions, you'll be able to.
Wow,
yeah.
That's technology.
Thank
I've
you.
got this
Oh,
one. Is that okay? I actually worked in the Coptic schools for 7 or 8 years. So in fact, I don't need a microphone because I can shout really loud. But that's okay. Yes. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and God Amen. Abuna was very, very kind. Very kind. God has been absolutely um, amazing in the last 20 years with this particular service. So when I was baptized at 15, I could not have seen the future. I could not have. And so now when I know his voice better, I look back and I can see that from the minute my foot stepped into a church, a Coptic church, he was preparing the way. So it's a long history. I'm nearly 60 now, so it's ridiculous that I'm in youth ministry. But I've got lots of people coming behind me, lots of employees, lots of servants being trained. Thank God. So I went to school with a Coptic girl, and she must have been the only Coptic girl in the school. And in fact, she said that she was an American African, because if she hadn't said Egyptian, everyone would have said what? Very Australian school. But it came to my notice, and I'm from an Irish and Scandinavian, so we're Irish, which is a little bit like Saudis, I think, and Scandinavian, Viking. So you get idiots with axes. So it was a very rough childhood, very violent and very Australian. Nothing to whinge about. No victim mentality, just absolutely normal. However, when I met this Egyptian girl, there was something in her that she had. So we're not Christian in my family. We're not going to church. We don't know what Christmas is. We don't know what Easter is. My father's family were Jewish a long time ago, and my mother's family were Catholic Irish. But we never had that in the home. So when I found this friend, when I went to her home and we over a bowl of molokhia, there was something about this family that stood out. And they were having difficulties too. But they had something that I didn't have, and I didn't even know what it was called. Long story short, of course, it was Christ. And so at 15, I was introduced to the church. And then Abuna Musa Solomon came from Egypt. He does not speak very good English even till now. But that did not stop him approaching me. Language is nothing. If there is love in a person, it will come across. And so he reached over barriers, he reached over culture, he reached over language, and he reached over, I was 15 and he was coming from Egypt, I think Alexandria from memory. So imagine the difference in these two worlds. But he was he was going to get his work done. And so he would come to where I was working at the time, and I was working with that girl's brother. So he'd come every week to have a Bible study, and this is all related to you being parents, just give me a minute. So he would have this Bible study, and he introduced me to the church. And eventually, through Amber Antonius Morris, who was part of that story, I was baptized. And then they put me in the hands of someone who brought me to no Agbayas, no Pulavis, nothing in English. The confessions were translated for 5 years. So there are 3 people walking the planet that could blood come out. I married one of them, so I'm saved. And that's the saying. He's not really saved because he's been here 50 years. So, but yeah, he thinks he's saved. He never went back. So we have now 2 children. I've got a grandchild, and they were referred in the church as skips, Egyptian and kangaroos, skips. And they look very Egyptian. No one in the family other than the dog looks like me. They look Egyptian, but they are Australian, and so they're a mix. And it was always my husband's family who were like, oh, how are we going to manage? How are we going to bring these kids up in such strictness in the Coptic Orthodox Church? And to some, it seems strict. However, I can assure you, there are other Christians of other denominations, New Zealander and Australian, that are far greater Christians than even us. Maybe they're not stamped with orthodoxy, but I know people that are interested in fasting and they're interested in the ancient church back, way back to when St. Mark started the church in Egypt. That's that story. The first time, because I'm Australian, for some reason Abuna Musa thought I knew more about drugs than the other Egyptians in the church. And so there were two brothers, and I was only about 19. They were only just older than me by 1 or 2 years, and they were on heroin. And Abuna Musa called me one day, he said, hey, take them upstairs and talk to them. I go, about what? Because they're on drugs. I go, and what do you want me to do? And I think that was the beginning of Exodus. So because I'm from an Australian community, yes, we talk more easier about taboo topics. But then after, so I've been married 42 years, I've been Coptic more than I've been an Australian. And this is my church, and yes, I'm not a guest. I know this church like my home. I know Egypt like my home. I know bishops and popes like they are related. And so it's a combination of how God called, and He does call. And do not fear people from outside completely, because God has work to do. And here we are in New Zealand in the 21st century. What's that got to do with you as young people that are about to marry? I'm guessing that's the demographics. Some. But we're talking to everyone. I'm talking to myself as a grandmother. How do we, and we said this psalm tonight, not by coincidence, and it's Psalm 136. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? So, once upon a time, we stand here now as Orthodox, as head of Orthodoxy, head of Christendom. We're very proud of who we are. And sometimes we think we're the only ones getting into heaven. Not so. But once upon a time, you and my heritage were pagans. Don't forget, you've not always been Christian. And once upon a time, St. Mark in Libya, at the breakfast table, over cornflakes, he said to his mother, I'm going over to the border, I'm going over the border to those people. Those people. And his mother, like me, I would have said to my son, are you kidding me? What are you going over there for? Because there was a desire to bring the faith to the greatest pagan civilization in the entire ancient world. You. And you've been blessed with something, a gift that really not too many other denominations have. You almost have 2,000 years of history, 2,000 years of popes, 2,000 years of saints, a cynic czar, the Samuel of Barn. You have everything. You are spoiled. You are spoiled. And you are chosen. And you are special. So now some of you are going to embark on a new church. After 2,000 years, another brick will be laid upon 2,000 years of history. And there has been blood in that history. And there has been suffering in that history. And if I say to you now, and I hope this becomes a dialogue, it's much better than listening to me. If I say to you, why do you think your families came to the most furthest part on the globe? Why did they come here? Why? Safety? Yep, absolutely, and rightly so. Better future for the kids. And that's the big one. So people migrated to better countries for education, for safety, for freedom to worship. We know the enemy really well. And so now we have a desire from people that came before you to bring you here. He's going to attack that. So if we came to do, your families came for that, to freedom of religion and of worship, the enemy is breathing down your neck. And what he's going to do is attack the church itself. not this building, but the church that you embark on as a new family. A husband and wife is the beginning, the birth of a new church, and the children are the congregation. So he will try and infiltrate that. And that's where, how do we sing that song of 2,000 years? The church is so strong in Egypt, so strong, and yes, it's under attack, but my goodness, they are amazing. Their services are amazing. Their commitment is amazing. But what if God allowed the oppression and the danger and the life in Egypt, he allowed it to be what it is, and then you migrate? Because I'm from the other side of the fence, the non-believing fence, I say to you, you came here for us. So God allowed the oppression for your families to pack their bags and move to the other side of the world. And then you plant a church here in New Zealand or Sydney, Melbourne, wherever. So now, the two stories come together. You've been sent here for others, but the enemy is going to attack your little church. And so I'm with Exodus after 20 years. We now have so many cases come through. We have about 3,000 clients walk through our door every year. 3,000. Pope Shenouda and Pope Tewodros and many bishops have blessed and continue to pray for us. It's a 24-hour, 7 days a week service. Why is that? Because often when things go wrong, they always go wrong on Christmas Day, they always go wrong after 9 p.m., and most people get arrested at 2 a.m. in the morning. And so volunteers and servants became very tired, and so then we found some donations, we started employing people. We have counsellors and psychologists, we have marriage counsellors, we have drug and alcohol counsellors, we have social workers, psychiatrists that are connected with us. Both Coptic and secular, because now Exodus has become this outreach into the wider community. And people are walking in, like me, and saying, why is it that you serve us? Even Muslims and Jews. At our Bible study, when we sit, we have Muslims and Jews and atheists and Copts. And no one feels out of place. Because if God is who he is, then he's omnipresent, omniscient, he's for everyone. And he will find a way to get those people. But the church now, whether you like it or not, and I get a bit tough with this because I love the church a lot, and I would hate to see it go down the road of other denominations where you start selling churches in 50 years' time. The responsibility of the blood of martyrs of 2,000 years lie on your shoulders today, in this place, in this city, in this country, in this church. Your future children then will carry the baton of the St. Mark's way back. So Exodus is like a voice from the future. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong. Not only do our families suffer, but the community suffers because you are the light and the salt of this world. And without you, we are in darkness. So whether you like it or not, you have a responsibility. You are special, not because your mother tells you. You are special because God has chosen you with all this history, and you're not going to get away with that lightly. It's like a child that has everything and then does nothing with it. Imagine someone that grows up to have millions of dollars and then just spends it like the prodigal son. Imagine, try and think of all the people that have gone before you. Think even just your grandparents or your great-grandparents. And they sang a song so that you can hear it in 2020. But if we fast forward and we say, okay, in 20 years' time, there's a good chance you will be parents. What is the identity of your child? In the Coptic school in Year 10, we have a module and it's called identity. So we play a bit of a game with the kids. We give them a piece of paper and say, write who you are. always goes like this, majority of the time. We are Egyptian or Sudanese, mind you, they have no clue where Sudan is on the map, and they cannot speak Arabic or read Arabic. But they will identify as Sudanese or Egyptian, then they will go at Coptic, then they'll go Orthodox, then they'll go Christian, and then they'll go Australian. There's a problem there. Christ should be on top. So when we lose our identity, not nationality, but identity, when your home is not Christ-like, then there's a chance, and this is the voice from the future, I can give you a story that would make all of your hair turn grey, one after another, after another, after another. Forgive me when I tell you, I'm not going to tell you the stories, but I can tell you that if you think our families are safe, they are not. And you're going to have to work hard to carry that song into the future. So now it's like a relay race that you run at school. You know the relay races where someone hands you a baton and then now it's been handed to you. So what do we do with that? So this presentation I'm going to go through, it's deliberately in watercolors because what I want you to think is your faith and how you act and what you believe in will be led into your children. So what you produce, the colour you produce, the intensity that you produce will come onto the paper. And if you know anything about watercolours, you can water them down so that they're almost watery, or they can be quite intense. My question to you when you go away tonight, think about what colour of intensity of faith your children have after you are married, and what do they look like? What do those children look like? And will they be salt and light to other people? Because without you, without your children, people like me will never know Christ. We will not have that opportunity. Pope Shenouda has a really good sermon. And he talks about when in heaven, on Judgment Day, when God welcomes home the saints, he'll say to St. Paul, "Welcome to heaven, St. Paul. Please just move aside. I want to see who's behind you." And St. Paul will move, and nations will be behind him. Then, let's say, when Pope Shenouda, on Judgment Day, God will welcome him in, and he'll say, "Move aside. I want to see who you brought to heaven." And the same will happen to us. Our families have a responsibility to bring people to the knowledge of Christ and to heaven. And so when you arrive, you will be asked, "Oh, good to see you, Riverside," because you were given everything. You were given every roadmap, every GPS coordinate, every book, every servant known to Christendom. So you got there because he wanted you to know that. But then he will ask, who did you bring with you? Your children are part of God's plan. And if you get it wrong, voices like the future, like me, will come and say, I've got a nickname sometimes in Sydney, and it's Prophet of Doom. It's quite unfair, because we don't see good cases, we just get bad cases. So the Coptic girl that was a prostitute, yes, we've had many. To the young men and women that are in jail and stuck there for a long time, yes, we have Coptic people in jail. We have people that are, one of the worst stories, I grew up with servants in a church who became drug dealers and who offered drugs to their children, and one of them is still in my care. I was talking to her today. Thank God she's clean, but she has struggled with crystal meth, ice, I don't know what we call it here. This drug is from hell itself. And we are years behind, believe it or not only Australian society in knowledge of drugs, but we are behind in Egypt's knowledge. So if you go to Egypt today, you will find Coptic rehab centers that are really amazing. You will see psychiatrists and psychologists there. You will see pamphlets. You will see a whole, so in Takwa, of all places in the state, Amba Ashaya has orchestrated the most amazing, it's like an empire. He's like a CEO, Al-Bashir is. So he has servants. Each drug addict would have a minimum of about 5 servants, 2 paid and 3 from the church. The drug addict's family will have another 5 servants. They have rehab centres. They have support groups. They have doctors appointed to every single case, working GPs who dedicate their time. We, over in the land of immigration, are in fact behind. And the Yusuf in the southern states of America, he built a rehab centre. He managed to build it. When he was in Sydney last, he came to Exodus because we communicate, and he was trying to steal my staff. That's what he was trying to do. And to say, I've got the rehab centre, but I don't have Exodus service. Can I take a few of them there? I go, if you build me a rehab centre, I'll swap. Because we don't have a rehab centre. Can't afford it. Too expensive. We have a young man that entered, he's been an ice addict for about 9 years now. Brought up in the church. His uncle is a priest. He has physically abused every person in his family. They have ADOs on him. He cannot control his life. His daily fee in the rehab centre, it was a public rehab centre, he would have sent a dog to, I'm sure in this country it's the same. So you need to have access to understanding how that works. $800 a day. So I am the voice of the future, and I'm here to tell you that as young people entering families, for our sake, your children's sake, get it right. So, I'm going to go to this because So, how to infuse God's virtues in our family, church, and children. So, top 4, what would you like to pass to your children? And in this period of your time, when you're getting to know your partner, you should be talking about how we're going to bring our kids up. Annabelle Baller was at a family conference just 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were there. And he was saying during this period, you should be talking about how are you going to discipline your children? How are you going to speak to them? What school are you going to send them to? You don't wait until they arrive because you are pitching a plan for eternity. We're so busy with consumed by, do we have the deposit for a house? What car are we going to drive? What kind of wedding? We're going to spend 50,000, 60,000, 100,000. And yet, when it comes to $800 a day for a rehab centre, suddenly, the family doesn't have it. But they just spent $80,000 on the sister's wedding. Priorities here. We have to save our people because we are needed in this world. So, top 4, what would you like to pass on to your children? Faith. Faith. Without it, we are living in darkness. From someone who lived in the darkness, you don't know how dark it is. You've got the lights on all the time. You're illuminated by stained glass windows and the light that has lasted 2,000 years. Live in darkness like those families, and you will regret that you lost your faith and that you didn't pass it to your children. And I don't mean faith like we go to church every Sunday, and that's another discussion. It's a living, real relationship with God. Hypocrisy and fakeness doesn't cut it by the time you're about 15. They'll see through you. So how are you living your Christian life now and predict how your children are living in faith or in this world or all the things, all of us, because we are spiritual and we are physical beings. Okay, so faith is the first one. What else? What is important to you to give to your children? Identity, yes, but Christ first. God does not see colour. If you go to KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, 65 years ago, Annabelle Mokos, who's passed away, he spent 3 years in KwaZulu-Natal, where Zulus live, black Zulus. Very, very tough people. He spent 3 years. He brought with him the procession cross and the vessels of the communion. He baptized a handful of people. Handful. He taught one deacon how the liturgy went, but there were no, this is back in the 50s, not even a recording was left. So Chinese whispers, spin forward 50 years, when you hear the liturgy in Zulu, it sounds, the tune's funny, because they couldn't retain it. But they're more Coptic, they've lived being Coptic Orthodox longer than most of them. So he went back to Egypt and he passed away 3 years. Amber Antonius comes back 50 years later. In the books, the archives of the Patriarchate, he found the name of that deacon. And he found him in KwaZulu-Natal, and he was a Coptic priest. He was baptizing people. He wasn't a priest, he was a deacon, but he was baptizing people because he said, why did you leave us? You brought us this knowledge, but then you went back home and no one contacted us. So when Amber Antonius found this out, he called these people, and there were hundreds. And so he quickly ordained a boy like Morris, who is now 97 years of age. He has 2 sons that are Coptic priests. And then authorizing all the baptisms and all the marriages. Now that church is as Coptic as us, but the faces are different. I was in Scotland. I did a research paper because, if you know, in the 5th century, monks travelled from Egypt to the UK, bringing monastic life in the 5th century. 5 or 7 months, I think 5. And they died there. And they know St. Pachomius very well. So there's an island far in the Hebrides. There's a little museum, and it talks about faith. And there's a Coptic cross, and the Coptic church is mentioned, and those monks. And we found them, they're buried in Ireland. They were there. But those people know monastic life because of your people. You have great power and you have God Himself. And so your children could go beyond where you are in New Zealand and Auckland and end up in KwaZulu-Natal, bringing the Word of God and the light of God with them. So all those things, you want compassion and you want honesty. You want your kids to be honest. You want them to be good, outstanding citizens. You want them to be forgiving. You want them to be truthful. You want them to be loving and unconditional love even to their enemies. So who's going to do that? Yeah? Okay. So these are all just, and morality, that's the big one. 1 year in the Coptic school, you do year 7 class, and the mother went to the principal and said, I want to pull my kid out of the Coptic Orthodox studies because an Australian is teaching. And the priest said, why, man? Why would you do that? Oh no, Australians don't have the same morality. Remember, we think, I'm part of you now, I'll step on this side. We think that those people don't have those things. But yet we let ourselves down, don't we? In evil morality. So, workshop. Okay, this is where you have to do something. What are the virtues that you value and how do you display them? Okay, I'm going to pick and make you work. So, Nina, is it? Nina? Okay, if you want to teach compassion to your child, what will you do? Okay, will you talk about it or do you believe you will have to act it out? Okay, so let's cut because of time. You can't go around saying, please be kind to people, or please feed the poor, and you do nothing. That's going to last you about 10 years. You've got 10 years on that policy. Beyond that, they're going to say that you don't do that. Why should I? Compassion is easy. To love when people love you is easy. But to love the kid that's bullying you at school is another thing. But how do we display that to children? We must be living that. They must see it, not what I say, but what I do. Kids are really good at watching you very, very closely. You talk about confession, but you don't go. Talk about communion, but you're late to church. All those things matter. There's okay. Next one. What else would you do? What about if you wanted to do forgiveness? How would you display that? Exactly. And for you, yes, and then you have to talk about discipline, and this is what young couples should be. How do you go to discipline? Because the ship over the Aqaba doesn't work. We know that. Yes, thank you. We know that that doesn't work. And yet, till today, I have families coming in. We threw a shoe at him, and even that didn't work. Compassion, forgiveness must be shown unconditionally. So it's not because I told you to do this, I will love you. It's yes, like we wish God would look at us and say, even in your sin, I still love you. There's nothing you could ever do to make God love you less. Nothing. And the children need to know that. Yes, there must be boundaries. Yes, there must be discipline. Because even the universe that has been created by God has boundaries and rules. So if it's raining, you will get wet. If you go through a red light in the country, you're going to get fined. And so families must have guidelines and boundaries. And they are taught from a very small age. Don't come in with kids playing up at 15. We get families and go, what are we going to do? He just hit his mother. Let's wind the clock back. Let us wind and unpack that. What happened back then? Because this is just a symptom now. So what's going on back then? So all the things that you want your children to display, you must be living it truthfully yourselves. Parents are ultimately the servant and representation of God to their children. Each one is a gift. And not just your child. The child that's naughty in front of the church on Sunday, and everyone goes, oh, that was really naughty. Go for him. There's something with that child. Show him compassion and unconditional love and attention like God gives us. And we can turn our congregations and our families around. It takes a village to bring a child up. And yes, we have a village, but we have a very, if I forgive me, I'm part of you, we're a bit critical. And we tend to ostracize those, that family, fill in the gap. Rather than looking at and saying, I am broken too, and God sees my brokenness and my sin, and it's no different to that family, let us sit with them and let us support them. Let us work together, pull together, whether they are Egyptian or Australian. There would be, if you had, I'm thinking outreach, but if you have a community here that is like that, your next door neighbours, and you've got an after school care and a tutoring system that they could come in and access with good, respectable people, we would have a flood of people. Not just the Sunday thing, it has to be a holistic approach to that person's life. And it comes because we can deliver those things. I'm going to move real quick. So, universal concerns for parents of teenagers. And you think that's a long way off? My granddaughter was just born yesterday, and she's nearly 10, which means she's nearly a teenager. Overnight. Start thinking now. You plan for your retirement now. You put the government's thinking better than us. Because it forces you to put money aside for superannuation from when you're old. But what are we planning for our teenagers? And the teenage years? Horrendous. Like batten down get the guns out. Even we have problems. Forget the world. Our community, our good Christian 2,000-year-old is struggling with teenagers. So we have to start looking at why that is. Why? And the biggest problem is because we talk of faith, but do we live it? This is the big thing. And I'll leave it for the end because there's so much to get through. So study after study has demonstrated that actually teenagers still look to their parents for guidance. A lot of you're led to believe that teenagers look to their peers, but in fact studies show that teenagers and children look to their parents for everything. And so they're watching you. And you are the representation of Christ and God himself in their lives first. Before you talk about the wedding of Cana or Jonah, your child is hearing and watching you from the crib. And so if you portray a corrupted Christ, or a corrupted God, or a God that has limits, or a God that is conditional, then that child will understand and grow with that knowledge. It's a big responsibility. I hope I'm not scaring a lot of children. But we have them anyway. Sometimes I say to some families, please don't have any more. We haven't got enough staff. Stop having children. So, of course, this entire scenario gets much more complicated if parents have not been consistent and clear with their values and expectations as the child has grown up. So, if your discipline is lukewarm, or if what you say is lukewarm, meaning your yes is sometimes a no and your no is sometimes a yes, exactly what it says in Revelations, that God, he would rather you cold or hot, but don't be lukewarm. Don't be wishy-washy. It is what it is. And if you want to grow trees, you have to plant the right seed. And the growth happens very quickly. Before you can expect, this is the hard bit, this is where now we target you. Whether you're married or not, you can still gain ground. So before you can expect your child to live by certain values, you must determine what your own values are and what values you want all of your children to exhibit. So how healthy is your Christian life now? And I don't mean coming to church, and I don't mean attending youth meetings. The word liturgy is a Greek word that means work of the people. So the least you're supposed to do is come here, have communion like a petrol station, fill up, and not go home to a bowl of morphea. You're supposed to leave here, take Christ, and then break it into the world. For all those people that are broken and dirty, when's the last time you saw leprosy in Auckland? Never. Never. The lepers of the 21st century are the top three: drug addicts, homeless, lost. They're your lepers. And sometimes we don't even want to eat with them. Sometimes we don't even want to touch them. Either it's too hard, go look up some information. Too dirty, get tough. Christ came, he went, leaving 99, went looking for the one. The word sheep is a collective noun, it's one or many. And we have many, many, many. But we need, if you're here on, I don't even know what day it is, I think it's Friday. It's Friday. Friday the 14th. Oh, it is, yes. 14th. If you're here at 8:10, then you're special. You're actually the cream of the crop. You're it. You're the best of the best. And so we have to be displaying this sort of servanthood, serving our children and serving our grandchildren and serving the community through them. Because we have a lifespan. You can't do this more than 20 years or 30 years. You need to be, and each person, each leper, will need approximately 8 people. Tough cases, 8 people surrounding that person. Because when you get tired and you go to court for the 3rd time that week, you need somebody else to step in. Or overdoses. I'm a prophet of doom. I'll give you the hard cases. But there are ones that slip away from us, and we've watched them slip into darkness because the families have failed to get themselves sorted. So it starts with you, each one by name. Where are you in your relationship with Don't think that there's going to be, you know, do some number crunching. This works better in Australia, but I don't know New Zealand that well. You have one priest, 100 families? 100 families. Each family maybe have a minimum of 3. There's 300. 24 hours in a day. How many phone calls to reach all of you? How many visitations in a year? The 4 priests of the Coptic Orthodox Church get blamed for everything. We are here. We are here, and they serve us, and we must serve them and serve with them. Don't ask, when did I last get a visit? Go visit. Don't complain about Sunday school. If you don't like something, go and do something. We have a lot of critics, but not enough movers. But we have everything in our hands. We have history and books. We have sacraments. We have servants. We have priests. We have popes. We've got the deluxe package, by the way. No one has what we have. No one. Like, even the Orthodox churches, the other Orthodox churches, they're great. But boy, did we get the deluxe. They look to us for so much. So we really have to be diligent and honest with what we've been given, because you will be asked, what did you do with it? What did you do? And if it means just caring for your kids so that they may carry the light into the next 20 years, then light it, and light it well. Being stewards of the earth and respecting God's creation is a big thing. Global caring, we're stewards. But do we care for humanity as much as we care for the trees? There's a big push, almost a distraction away from spiritual growth. Be distracted by everything. Give your kids everything. Give them the best education. Give them, unlimited internet. Teach them about trees. Teach them about recycling. But don't teach them about eternity. There's a trick going on. We're being hoodwinked. So, respecting one another. Can you imagine that a 15-year-old would hit his mother? How can that happen? When did that go so horribly wrong? Perhaps, maybe they're just copying. That's actually a very good answer. We had a young kid, and he was a really little kid, and his dad was a big guy, and he really did beat him up. The domestic violence in that home was something I hadn't seen. That level. That little kid, he grew and he grew and he grew, and he grew, and he went to the gym, and he got bigger, and he got bigger, and he got bigger, and he started taking ice because he was angry. And then one day, he hit his father, and he went across the room, and he was jailed for assault. And then everyone says, look at that kid, how terrible he is. But no one, our community, we blind almost, we can't expose these things. Not switch this one off. So, on Monday, groundbreaking, on Monday in Sydney. So we had, I don't know if you heard, we had one of our families, the mother was murdered not long ago. And those kids have been our clients. There's 3 boys, all with drug issues because of the violence in the house. So we weren't associated, you couldn't, the family was in crisis. Anyway, the husband, this is not the first murder. So the court case is coming up. So New South Wales Health and Child Protection, who we work with, rang us and they said this, which we were like, oh my goodness. We know Exodus is part of the Coptic community because we're proud of that. They said, you need to get your servants and your priests and anyone in authority into a training session of about mandatory reporting and about what is right and what is wrong in a domestic violence scene. Monday, the government, the Australian government, is training our clergy and servants in a big meeting in Sydney. This is groundbreaking. There's a lot of cultural issues that have to be worked through. But unless we open the door and let the fresh air in and talk about these taboo topics of addiction and domestic violence, pornography, these things are eating away. It's like termites. Beautiful wooden iconostasis, that's us. But if we don't fumigate and we don't protect, termites will eat this away. And that's what we have to sort of, now in the 21st century, kids, the internet has opened a portal of information that cannot be shut. We have parents that come and say, we confiscated, very proudly, we confiscated their laptop and their tablet. So they're not accessing any more pornography. So do they have their smartphone? They go, yes. 101 about the internet. We as adults have to be up to date about everything. Huge responsibility. If in Suhag we don't need this, we just yell. Thanks. All right. Attitude is everything. What are you demonstrating to your future spouse? How are you living now before you are joined into a new church? How is that looking? And this is where our fathers of the church, they're there for you to guide you into a sacrament. We can't take it lightly. In the ancient church, deacons, there's a deacon on the other side of the altar. Priest is praying this side. There's a deacon that side. That deacon was never there in the early church. He was placed there when the barbers, the thieves and robbers would attack the monastery. And so that deacon looks at that door. And so when they come in they would come and try and get the sacrament. They had enough time to collect it. And in the ancient churches in Egypt, there's an exit so that they could escape. We guard the sacrament with our lives. And if you tell me, what happens if, God forbid, during communion the priest may drop a crumb? What happens? What happens at that moment? Everyone's on their knees, the mass stops, candles are down, and they're looking because we cannot leave the body of Christ on the floor. And yet we are part of his body. Do we treat it with the same respect? Do we treat our spouses? Pornography is damaging our marriages. And number one, oh dear, we can't even use the word. We can't talk about it. How are we going to administer medicine if you don't have anything? You don't have a disease. It isn't normalizing the subjects, but it is making us in a position that we can talk about it so that we can say, this is wrong. This is disrespectful. This shouldn't happen. And when we can do that, our children will also hear our parents talking, and sexuality, addiction, all the taboos all the vices that we have in community now can be spoken from your home. Don't leave it for the school to do it, if they're not going to do it. Don't leave it for outsiders, because it will not contain Christ in that message. And so we who know Christ have to be able to speak these words and deal with this and sit in the mud and discuss it, because without it we're going to go backwards. We will go backwards. Almost done. Keeping it real. That's nice and simple. I'm going to leave it at that. There's others, but I want to leave it there. Keep it real. Keep your faith real. It isn't, I'll tell you what won't save you. the gold cross around the neck, or the woven from St. Bishop Monastery. The tattoos, one second. Your names, Lena, Mark. I had one Coptic class one year. I had 7 Minas in it. Mina 1, get out. Mina 2, get out. Mina 3, get out. Marinas and Marys, this will not save you. The stamp that will save you will be the imitation of Christ. And if you desire your children to be saved, they must have this stamp. But it is passed from you to them. And it's not, the church is doing everything it can. It is providing masses every day, sacraments for you, books in English. In Africa, we have the Cholagi, the liturgy book, in Zulu, Xhosa, in 10 languages. We're doing all of that. But are we displaying unconditional love? This is the question. So the church is doing everything it can. And, when you see how the church is, and I'm sure you've all been to Egypt, we're talking millions. One church can have 2,000 families, and there are still 7 priests. The numbers don't add up. There are not enough. So you have a role to play in this body of Christ, and you have a role in your church, in your future home. Don't leave it. Don't leave it for the priest to come at 3 a.m. in the morning to break you apart because you had an argument about the coloured carpet you're going to buy. It gets that petty. Ask the one. It gets that petty. How do we communicate with our future spouses? Is it with respect, with unconditional love, with compassion and honesty? Or are we already beginning to lie in this grey area? Is it a lie? Is it not a lie? Little tiny things creep in without you knowing. And one day you will find yourself with a teenager that is displaying those same characteristics, and you'll have no one to blame but yourself. But blame will not save you. Blame will not, you'll be rescuing at that point. And you better be ready for a change, and you be ready to jump in a raging water to rescue that son or that daughter of yours. Now is the time not to have superannuation. Now is the time to bank away a wealth of understanding and of respect and of faith with your spouse that will hold you for the next. I've been married to a Saidi for 42 years. Yeah, touch wood. It's actually not well at the moment. Yes, touch wood. But the church allowed that, and not just to say things. You have a great day, everyone goes great, great marriage. But when things get rough, sickness, financial issues, whatever it is, when the waters get troubled, you too will be the stability in that home. And the priest will be there to add, but don't expect him to save. That is not fair. They are already doing enough by serving us with the sacraments. The work of the people is to bring up churches, little tiny churches, brick by brick, so that one day, in 30 years, after I'm gone, God forbid, Abuna might be still here, but he'll be retired, there'll be your children sitting here, and you'll be at home, Tethers and Gedors, and what will the faces look like? Will there be this many, or that many, or this few? Because that number is determined today. Not just for your little family, but for the people next to you, that family that's next to you. They will need support, because sometimes one family might succeed in something and go 2 by 2. When one family is down, one family picks up. And we continue this journey so that in 1,000 years, the Church of St. Mark and the body of Christ is alive and well in space, maybe. Who knows where we will go? Because if we can go to KwaZulu-Natal, which is in the middle of South Africa, with no roads, priest who never had a car, or if a 15-year-old Australian can be standing here, and I can stand with you and look back and see an Australian saying, look, I think I'm Egyptian. I think I'm like you. When I'm in Africa, I think I can be the only white person in KwaZulu-Natal. 30 years ago, I was the only white person. And there were Egyptians, and there were sort of coloured people, and then there were Zulus. You don't know where God will send your child, but where he goes is everything that he needs to bring the light into the future. It's all riding on you. You're very, very special people, and the world needs you. We need you. On the other side of the fence, we need you. And we need your children to be mixing with our children and strong, not isolating like we've got coronavirus. Like the world's got coronavirus and then there's all the Coptic kids. We don't want them mixing. But who will go? Who will go and talk if they won't be sent? You will be asked about that. Immune them with everything you have. You've got the deluxe package. Be the deluxe package to them, deliver it, and then do not fear. Do you think that communion can be just wiped out? People go, oh, things are going to affect them. Not if you've done a good job. It's impossible because Christ reigns. And it must remain that way. Glory be to God forever. Any questions? Yep.
Sometimes we see very spiritual and committed Christian parents, and their kids still don't come up that way.
Yes.
How do you explain it?
Okay. I know for a fact that there's a small percentage. But the majority of humanity does not wake up one morning and say, I really want to be a drug addict today. Or I really want to be a prostitute when I grow up. Very rarely. Very rarely. So it's a really good question, and I think we have to be very honest with ourselves. We're not perfect, and our children will be. There is a spiritual war on, for sure. And the enemy wants your kids, because they're the ones with the knowledge. But a child doesn't grow up and want to be a drug addict or want to be a delinquent. So there's a really good book called The 5 Love Languages. You probably know it as A Couple. The same author has written 5 Love Languages for Children, 5 Love Languages for Teenagers, and even grown children. The same 5 apply, the same 5 love languages. So, affirmative language, service, giving, quality time, and community. Look it up, Google it. Yeah, Google it. Really? Has that happened in that family? Without judging that family, because there are influences. Did they keep something a secret from the rest of the community when they could have asked for help? Maybe the father was not there. Maybe he was. There's a really good Christian book that talks about fathers being like in the war. When your father goes to war, he is missing in action. So there isn't enough law enforcement, and the husband remains the Christ in that household. I mean, the church and its teachings and the Bible, we are equal, but they're different roles. And so, if, God forbid, the father is not there for whatever reason, sickness, death, checked out because he's an addict, he's present, but he's not there, then the other fathers have to step in around that family. So you have a responsibility. I keep pushing it because it's so true. We rely heavily on mentors. So we had 2 kids. I'll give you a quick story to demonstrate that. Lovely family. Religious. Beautiful. The boys were at the time 5 and 6. Went to church. Lovely. Perfect. The grandfather lived with them. One night, grandfather was smoking in bed. Cigarette hit the mattress. House went on fire. Baba wakes up, grabs his 2 sons out to the front, puts them on the grass, goes back in, grabs his wife, puts her in the front. He goes back in the house to get Geddu. And from the boys who I met when they were like late, when they were in about 13, they were one was using ice and one was very depressed. So they turned and they saw their father enter the house, and the house collapsed and he died, along with Geddu. That trauma was enough to destroy at least 6 years of goodness. And so he grew up to be an ice addict. At the age of 15, by 16 he had an implant of naltrexone, which was at the time it was a trial, to stop him using ice. He tried to commit suicide. His mother was a wreck. She was on antidepressants, of course. You can't blame anybody for any of that. So that kid, because of circumstance, was not able to survive. Grace of God, he did, and he came through. After the naltrexone was injected, it was like a top-up every month from then. And he recovered, and he went back and finished school because he was living with us in one of our refuges. Because he was violent, his mum couldn't cope. So he lived with us for about 3 years. Then he went back and he finished his HSC, and then he did a real estate course. And look how God works. And he was better, but he went to church, but he really didn't. He was really angry with God because his dad died. God took his dad. The last exam of the real estate diploma, he wakes up. I'm in front of the altar. This is how it went. He woke up and he was blind. And we all thought it was maybe because he had been injecting ice, or we didn't know, but we took him to the ophthalmologist, who is the brother of one of the priests. The optic nerve had died. It was a genetic thing that we found out from the mother. Had been carried, and he was blind, legally blind overnight. Overnight. He remained like that for 15 months. And then, one day, he could see. And I know what I'm saying, and I know if I was sitting there and hearing that, I don't know how do you compensate? The optic nerve died in both eyes. Legally blind. He had a walking stick, and he was going to the Blind Association in Australia to learn how to read Braille, and he couldn't study and everything. He woke up and he drove to our office because he was back home by then. So I took him to the ophthalmologist down the road, who was the priest's brother, and I go, here's so-and-so. He goes, no way, no, this can't happen. But that boy now will stand here and give a better testimony and know Christ. It will make you weep. But it took blindness for him to come to know his Christ and his God. And he's fine. And his brother, who was diagnosed with depression, went on to be one of our youth workers and is now masters in social work. God is good. So things can be bad, but he uses those things for a purpose. We just have to hang in. And honesty plays a big part. Long answer for a short question. Yeah.
So maybe sometimes you may not have a good Christian family because I come to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
And I bring my kids to Sunday school, and I do all the fasting of the church, and maybe I'm reading my prayer. I am a successful parent. Can you please, maybe from your point of view, this person went through a lot of struggle with family facing problems. What is the correct definition for a Christian family? What do we need to do to be a true Christian family, not focusing on time to church?
The description doesn't start here. It's at home, in that church. So a mother and a father that is Christ-like, not fake. Christ-like in all things. the husband gives what is during the wedding ceremony, the wife must serve the husband, but the part B of that verse is, and he is to sacrifice his life like Christ did for the church. Sacrifice, unconditional love, a gentleness of Christ, a forgiving Christ for both parties, one that is not material driven, one that will wash the feet, the servant, the true servant king. That's what it looks like. And you can pull it off. You can fake it here every Sunday. We fake it. All of us. We look the part. But behind closed doors, it is completely different. Completely different. So sit with yourself and it's all the sacraments. It's confession and repentance, and it's service, and it's feeding the poor, and it's being there when everything is bad. Kids see their parents really good when things are good, but they don't see how, like you're driving and someone cuts you off and you swear. That's the Christ they see. That's the one they see more. Unfortunately, when it's marketing, you get one bad product, you'll tell 10 people. You buy one good product, you tell 2 people. Statistics. So when you do something wrong in front of your kid, believe me, they're watching. They're watching like with a microscope. So it's hard to without hounding, but it means everything that is not Christ-like in our lives. That's what does it. That's what really ruins things. Yep.
On that point, we are humans.
Yes, I did.
So even
Yes.
as parents, I make mistakes.
Yep.
Like sometimes talking the wrong way, get a bit more angry, a bit more intolerant in some behaviors. How do I fix that?
Yep.
So that my son doesn't get the negative impact of this behavior.
Yeah. So when we do something wrong as parents, we must wash their feet and say, I have done something wrong. And God is not happy with me, my son, when I sin. And so I'm going to try and change this behavior, whatever it is, and I want you to help me with this. And let us sit, this is a workshop, every week and discuss how we can communicate better. Because if there's no communication, you've got problems later on. So let's say you yelled at the kid and you feel bad and he's unhappy. So walk away, calm down, come back together, bring him like Christ with the children and say, my son, I love you very much and I should not yell. Let us learn to communicate. How about you write me a note or leave a note on their pillow, like the 5 love languages. If you read this book, this is the answer that needs to happen. We're not perfect parents. It's a tough gig. It's the worst job in the world. In fact, I'd say I don't have any. Really. Because you will work, and a good family, their child will be a mirror to the parent. And so I stop swearing because I'm imitating not Christ, but an opposite thing. And so I'll change for the sake of the salvation. We bring our kids for baptism and the white gown and the bomboniera and the dinner afterwards. But then 5 years later, we're swearing at the red lights and we don't care. We forget that the little things are what matter. They're valuable to these children. It's okay to repent and it's okay to do things wrong if we repent. We're not perfect. And you say, I can do that better. And then you teach them grit and you teach them confession. You teach them repentance and forgiveness. You can be wrong. Why not? With wisdom. That's another talk, but with wisdom.
you mentioned also about going to the altar to the petrol station to be filled up with Christ. Then you go outside and pass Christ on to other people. I personally find it difficult to break the barrier with people from outside. Maybe it's a cultural difference, although I have been living here for more than 20 years, but also because I think people from outside are mostly closed against Christ. Most, at least that's my experience. They don't like to talk about religion. They try to avoid it in many ways. And this is my experience with many people outside. How do we tackle that problem?
If we have a really good church here and we have no soccer, we have a soccer team, but no bus driver to bring our children here, then the soccer program in the church doesn't work. So we need the driver of the bus to pick the kids to bring. If God is who He is in everything. So we often think that outreach is preaching and Bible bashing and standing on the corner and everyone's going to hell. I can tell you, coming from the other side, that is not, you're not selling God that way. I'm not buying Him at all. So the World Mission Board, many years ago, 50 years ago, realized that there's a danger in giving people rice. They're called rice Christians. So if you give people things to come to church, that's not good. And Bible bashing isn't either, because if you're making them feel bad about themselves rather than knowing that God loves them. So there's an in-between. That in-between is exactly the church of the first century. It is orphans and widows and tables and children, and it's a cup of tea. So where I'm staying with Mary McKillop in Mission Bay, so they're the sisters of Josephites, and they're Sisters of Mercy. Both started by nuns, Irish and Scottish, 120 years ago. Even then they knew this, and they have a service called a cup of tea. And you make tea, and you call people in. And you don't mention God, but you listen, and you create a safe space. And so they bring their life to you, and then you begin to serve, and you begin to wash. It's the long way. It's so much easier to walk into a city and baptize people and promise them rights, but they will not be there. We've actually documented in Africa, even the Coptic Church baptized was a ridiculous number. And I took that report with Antonis. We went in and we baptized X number, and then we left. We left them like we did with the Zulus. And they came and complained and they said, you owe us now because we gave you our people and you baptized us and you owe us something. So that doesn't work. But living amongst, it's called urban ministry. It means I move in and I live with you. And I live your life in your brokenness in the gutter. Not living, literally. But it's working and appreciating the brokenness in someone else and seeing your own brokenness. And then I start to talk eventually that how God healed that brokenness. And they accept it. So we have to find stepping stones, like the soccer match and the bus driver who picks the kids up. We have to find stepping stones to reach out. So it might be that a broken car one day is an opportunity to bring someone to the knowledge of Christ. Broken car sounds like a bad thing. I was telling one in the car, this Coptic girl that was a prostitute. I made friends with the pimp of the brothel to get to this girl, and he wouldn't budge. Like he was having a bar of it. But then one day her car broke down, and someone brought her and said, "I'm going to take care of her car. Can you make her breakfast?" I said, "Okay." Bacon and eggs and a cup of tea. And she didn't know I was Coptic because I don't look Coptic. And she had the name of Diana, believe it or not. And she was bruised and she was a bad case. And a cup of tea and a slice of bacon on a fasting day, and God's grace brought her back to her family. God is amazing. Don't underestimate broken cars, rations of bacon, and rainy days. Look for them. Look for them. Because that girl now is standing in church and no one knew the story. She stands like everyone else, but she's marrying the Egyptian today. You find stepping stones. We have workshops that do that.
I hope no one will go there and find Juliana. Are you the one?
Oh, there's too many. How many Damianas do we have? In fact, yes, she would be the one you would say, oh, that girl, very nice girl. In fact, you would never choose. Yeah. She's actually had tattoos in lazily moved. So she's lovely.
We have,
Sorry,
we
too
have,
loud.
so we have questions coming up from
Gosh.
people. Yeah, so you want me to pull them up?
When do we talk about drugs?
Yeah, what age?
Last week, we had a 13-year-old arrested Coptic kid selling heroin. So definitely before 13. Yes. But then, it goes back to the story. How come he's selling drugs at 13? Because his father abandoned the family a long time ago. He's had no role model whatsoever, and that kid is angry as hell. So, I would introduce, discernment is what you want to teach. Discernment. What is right and what is wrong. God created everything, including drugs. In Genesis, it says the herbs of the field. Let me slow down. You don't go and quote me. We have a talk about that. So you can drop a bomb on Hiroshima, radioactive, and burn the city. Yes? But then you need radiotherapy for cancer. So it's not the radioactive that's bad, it's the use of it, right? God created sex because he loves us that much that he wants us to. You want to see a man crumble, go to a delivery room when his son is born. And he's crying because he realizes he's part of the story of creation. Sex is not bad. It's had a bad PR job done on it, and now we think it's bad. And pornography came on and made it even worse. And so now it's very bad. But God created that so that we can be his characteristic, even as being creator, he shared with us. So that's not bad. Let's go to TV, internet. You can get a degree online, but then you can access pornography. It's not the internet that's the problem. It's the discernment by which we can't choose right and wrong. Heroin was morphine. You break your leg, you want a shot of morphine, believe me. But then all of a sudden it's bad. Cannabis now, the green devil, is now, if you have anything to do with oncology, people that have been suffering under chemotherapy are now not feeling so nauseous and they are eating well because of God creating that. But we have abused it. So you teach your children, and my goodness, the Coptic Church is magnificent for that. We've got 200, join the Coptic Church and you'll be a vegan most of the year. Learn, and you get 2 Christmases and 2 Easters and 2 New Years. It's a bonus. And good food. So, today, young Simon, it's Wednesday. Here is a bar of chocolate, and here is a fruit. Monday and Tuesday, have the chocolate, okay. But today we're going to discern. And I'm going to tell you that Friday or Wednesday, we fast because of this reason. Let us only eat half the block of chocolate today because you're 5. But by the time you're 6, you've taught him to discern that he doesn't need that chocolate. The chocolate is the drug. The tablet is the drug. Spending is the drug. speaking badly at home is a drug. So it isn't about drugs, it's about the skill to discern right from wrong. And then you start talking about the creation of God and how man abuses it. You don't need a chocolate every day. Let's have it only 5 days out of 7. And let's have it 3 out of 7. And let's have it 1 out of 7. If you can teach your kids self-control, boy, you're going to be the best parents. So I apologize to my kids after I get angry with them. In your opinion, what do I do to protect them from becoming an angry person?
I think we asked
Yeah.
a similar one.
Yeah. Kids aren't born with hate, they're taught. And they're not, same thing. They just echo what we do. They're monkeys. Do what you do. If you see something nasty in your kid, look to the mirror. Often you give it to them. It's a bit infectious. Yes. Does Exodus have any resources that we could use for our children to start talking about? Yes, I've brought some and Abuna has them, and they're online and you can find them. They're on our website, so they're free. So we're trying to make them copter size. So where the government would issue a pamphlet about alcohol and that moderation is acceptable, we try and help you with that a little bit. Yeah, copy. Not ours anyway. God gave it and we stole it from the government. Some of us are not even first generation Kiwis. How do we know what values or behaviours we should teach our kids and which ones we should forget in the start? Discernment. Again, we have to learn to discern. So you're in a foreign land. St. Mark was in a foreign land and he discerned what was good and what was bad. We just have to do the same thing. We should have the skill to determine what is not good for our family. And if we are living a true Christian life, we should have those skills. We should. My kids, we had a big problem with my kids about they'd go surfing and then early in the morning and they'd go to the mass. Or then they wanted to go back surfing and my husband being saying, he went, you can't go swimming after communion. And my kids were like, what are you talking about? Where do you get this from? And so we suffered. I'd say marry your own people. It's so hard. It's so hard. So, we had to sit down and he explained it. And then, they're not going to take everything on board, but sometimes they think. At least sometimes they think. And they think about the body of Christ. But you may not win every battle there. But there is good in the New Zealander culture. There is. There's a huge Christian festival here for youth. I have friends that run it. Yes. Yeah, it's called something fest. And some of our, we go over there, they don't. Not everything is bad. Don't fear mixing with other Christians even. But, like a nationality, you don't enjoy everyone's food. If you've done it right, who could give this up? Who could give this up? Who? People die for this all the time. We just have to value it enough and practice valuing it in front of our kids so that they don't discard it. I remember my kids were little and we didn't go to church one week. They were like 4 and 5. And on the way back, they said, oh, we didn't get any Orban today. I'm miserable in the back seat. And I thought they didn't talk about the icons or anything. They just wanted that bread. And my granddaughter is, so look how it's watering down. So I'm Scandinavian Irish. My husband's Egyptian. My daughter is that. She married a guy from America who is Italian American Indian. That kid's the United Nations. And she comes and says, no, not Taylor. Nan, you got church bread today? she doesn't know, like even this is, she would come with me when she was little and she knows at home, she knows St. George and she knows this one and that one. But very basic because her father now doesn't know this. And so he's Catholic, and so there's something else there. But where's the church bread? And she can tell you, see the cross in the middle and the holes in this. The beauty about this church, even today in Egypt, 50% of Egyptians are illiterate. Till today. It's huge. So if you can't read, look at the value of icons. Every one of these will tell you the story of Christ in a life, not just the facts, but the application, life application. If you are blind, you come in and smell the Bechor. If you're blind and deaf, you can partake in communion and taste. He is everywhere, in everything, for everybody. Don't water it down with too much water. Try and keep it as strong as you can. Okay? You know. Pardon? Is it parachute music? I don't know this one. New Zealand's, Australia is not classified as Christian, and William was telling me no, it's New Zealand, but there are Christians here. And we should be opening, don't underestimate this place. Christians today are looking for an ancient church, an ancient faith in a modern world. People are turning to orthodoxy because they're sick of the watered down Christianity. Open the doors. Let them see what is inside. I often get cranky with my husband. I get worked up. I go, you're just like you've got this jewelry box and you lift the lid and you show me rubies and diamonds and then you slam it shut. We don't get people to see what's inside. We don't open our doors. We don't expose this to the world. It's a lighthouse, but we keep the windows closed. So, yeah. People want to know that. If you go to, you've got Koorong here, like bookshops, right? Christian? Manna. Now, in Sydney, shelf after shelf, about two topics. One, fasting. People want to know the fasting of the first church. And two, I've got Aussie friends who are learning Arabic, and that's hard, trust me, I know. I go, why are you learning Arabic? They go, because we're going to go to this suburb called Lakemba, which is downtown Beirut, and we're going to go there and we sit there and we talk to them in Arabic. I go, mate, I can give you 500 Egyptians who speak perfect Arabic. Do you want to borrow them? But our people won't go. The Aussies are going. Yeah, this is hilarious. Anyway, okay, so, thought about it. At what age? Social media. Again, discernment. I don't think social media is the problem. I think lack of self-control is the problem. And you've got net nanny and all those things, so the little ones won't get onto pornography. But you have to, what if you're not there one day? And your kid is a 16-year-old that has full access to everything and you can't monitor it. So you have to teach them to turn it off, to know when 2 hours is too much. Talk about eyesight. Talk about, we're going to give you the responsibility. You've got 1 hour. Let's say we agree. Every house will be different. 1 hour is maximum. So we're going to let you choose when to stop using the internet within that hour. And try and teach them and say, oh, we're going to go for a walk. Would you like to come with us? Oh, yeah, bang, put it down and go. And say to them, we enjoyed the walk. Positive reinforcement. Wasn't it great to be in the sun today? I'm so pleased you came with us. But you've got to set it up. You've got to sell it. Don't be lazy. Don't just give them the tablet and say, this is all that's happening. We're going for a bike ride. Include them in your life and the tablet will mean nothing. But we use it, and so then we complain. You know, we're part of the problem with that. But it means hard work for us. So when you've been at work all day, you've got to come home and work again. Again, for about 20 years. So don't have too many children. I had one really good baby and I thought, what's everyone complaining about? And then 14 months later, I had my son. I knew then what they were complaining about. That kid never slept. And only now he's 38. And he sleeps really well. And me, I'm trained to stay up all night. Thank you for your attention. That's a long one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I'm pretty sure everyone really can relate to this topic in their own way, and you can benefit a lot. I myself did. A lot of words hang in my mind now. So we'll definitely be talking a lot later on. Also, would like to thank Nina for the hymn. It's amazing. I'm pretty sure Nadine, you keep on asking Nina to sing because they're lovely boys there. Thanks, Freddie, for again for the idea and sorting out all this work. And please, if you're going to join us for the activity in the other building, there's a hidden gem in the other building. His name is Andrew. He's been looking after our kids, training them soccer, helping them. Please, when you go there, if you go there, just please say thank you to him. It will be much appreciated. I'll pass on to you.
Thank you so much again, Debbie, for an amazing book. And I'm sure Debbie is always catching the surface. The justice catch the surface. So we still have many sessions with Debbie. So please feel free to come tomorrow and join us at 5:15 with the servant meeting. You are all more than welcome to come and join us. We all serve in a church. I believe don't leave any session. So in a session you hear about it, come and sit down and learn. Because I'm sure that maybe she talked about very important issues. The point is not just how to bring our children to church. It's not the point that we're going to fast or we're going to pray on the day. The way that we practice this at home is more essential than anything that of practices that we might be doing. This is important, yeah, but we can't rely on it. It's not my role to bring them to church and the church will do all the work. No, we believe in it. So the work to start at home and be completed in the church, and I'm sure that really, she mentioned a lot of examples about when family broken, there is no love between the husband and wife, not through love, not through forgiveness, you working together, you always smile, the kids are sad. But if the husband and wife are not in harmony, you find the children, the family and spending that quality time. So I'm sure that we're going to hear more from them because put it that way, this is just the beginning. So not just from this. So I spoke to Debbie and definitely we have more sessions to come. So we have events booking for July. And maybe we have another events booking for October or whatever. We're gonna demand a lot from Debbie because she knows part of us and we are really important need to hear more and to discuss to hear more. This is just the beginning. So thanks so much again, Debbie, for your time, you lift your family, you lift for all the people here that believe you, and you came here to serve us. And I don't know that when I heard you today, I just not seeing like a normal servant is not a pope or a bishop or a priest. You know. I can't see any different. I'm sure that the Spirit of God is speaking through you. And I'm sure there will be some chance that anyone will ask you any private question. So it's a good chance not to let maybe go home as everything else. So if for you to extend it or any question, it's a chance for you. If you have any private conversation, thank you, Lily is gonna take Lily back home, so Lily is gonna start with us here for a while. So thank you so much for all of you, and thank you again, Debbie, for your love and your time with us. So we're going to conclude with a prayer. And in the name of the tree, que adiós, Martin, que socio, socio, que no llevo en lo hemos llevado en choice, Jesus, Restos is mona irente, de mare de cainte, que in coin sostende, leo, sodium mono, nana, que eleison, you grant us a future service for us. Give you power of glory forever and ever. Amen. O Lord Jesus, O worthy to be thankful in our Father, Father, make me thy crown, I will be thy minister in heaven. Yours is there, O Lord, forgive us our trespasses, and we forgive those trespass against us. Lead us into temptation, but us from evil. Give us power of our heaven. Lord, of the Father, the Son, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the fellowship and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you. We go into the peace of the Lord, be with you all. I have a one for all of you. After we're gonna say thank you to Betty, I'm gonna give it at the of the church. So, Betty has one very much for the worship.